Hi, this is Nadine Alex Bravo, and today we're going to review radicals. So this session will just have a brief review of the radicals that you have because you might encounter this in differential calculus and simplification of different functions or algebraic expressions. Okay, so this presentation will contain number one, the concept on fractional exponents and radicals. Number two, the laws of radicals and how we're going to use them to simplify radical expressions. The third would be, and the fourth would be the four basic operations. So that would be addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division on radicals. Okay. So first off, radicals are defined to be in the symbol nth root or nth root of x, which is this one. This is known as the principal nth root of x, principal nth root of x, and denoted by this symbol, which we call a radical. Okay, so ito yung general representation natin of a radical. The integer n is the index or order of the radical. So if you have nth root of x, this is an integer, okay, which is known to be an order or an index. Okay. The number x under the radical sign. So this one is your radical sign. And this x here, the function or the number under your radical sign, we call that the radicand. Okay. So if no index is written, so walang nakasulat dito, that means 2 yon. By default, that's equivalent to 2. And we know that as the square root. Okay, so basically you'll have square root of x, where this is known to be the principal square root of x. Okay, if ever you will be given, like let's say for example square root of 4, obviously by understanding, diba, alam natin that 2 will be our answer. So 2 is known to be the principal square root of 4. Okay, but it is also permissible, or it is allowed for you to have positive, negative, okay, positive, negative 2 or plus minus 2 as the root of square root of 4. Kasi alam natin, negative 2 multiplied by negative 2 will also produce positive 4. Pero we do not consider the negative 2 as a principal root of 4. We always use the positive value 2 as the principal root, but it is permissible. Ibig sabihin, it is allowed for us to represent the root of 4 as plus minus 2. Okay. With fractional exponents naman, if we're going to let m and n be positive integers with no common factor other than 1, we have, okay, your nth root of a, for example, okay, or your nth root of x. These may be written, okay, as fractional exponents. The roots may be written as fractional exponents in the sense that this will be x raised to the reciprocal of the index. So that would be 1 over n. So if this is nth root of a, that would be a being your base or your radicand raised to the reciprocal of your index, which is 1 over n also. So if you have your radical in the fractional exponent raised to m, that means the laws of exponents will hold, diba? Or we can apply our laws of exponents, which means m will be multiplied to the exponent inside the function, which is 1 over n, and then you'll have it as a raised to m over n. And it will lead to, okay, knowing that a raised to 1 over n is a radical which may be represented as the square root or the nth root of a, quantity raised to m, this is similar to the nth root of a raised to m, or the m power of the nth root of a. Okay, which is similar to this. Okay, pare-pares lang po yan. And we're doing this on the assumption that we can still apply the laws of exponents. Okay, so what are the different laws of radicals that we must know? Okay, we have 4. The first one is the nth root of a raised to n will be equivalent to a, proving this using the laws of exponents. So if you have a raised to n, okay, your radicand, which is, kukunan natin siya ng nth root. So, ibig sabihin, i-raise natin siya to an exponent of 1 over n, the reciprocal of the root. Applying laws of exponents, you will have this as a raised to n over n, which is 1, So you'll get a raised to 1, which is simply a. Okay. Note that a should be greater than 0. Okay. Number 2, the nth root of ab is simply equivalent to the nth root of a multiplied to the nth root of b, knowing that a and b are both greater than 0. So, if you'll notice, pwede nating sabihin na ito ay ab, quantity raised to 1 over n, diba dito? And that would be equivalent to, using expanded power rule, diba? We can distribute the exponent to all the factors inside or to all the factors in the base, and that will lead to a raised to 1 over n times b raised to 1 over n, which in turn can be written as this one. Okay? The third one is still your expanded power rule, pero this time on quotients naman or on fractions. So if you have nth root of a over b, that's a over b quantity raised to 1 over n. That means you have a raised to 1 over n all over b raised to 1 over n, where a raised to 1 over n is actually the nth root of a, all over b raised to 1 over n is actually the nth root of b, and is similar to this one. Okay? And the last one would be the mth root of the nth root of a, which is simply the mnth root of a. Because as you can notice, this one can be written as a raised to 1 over n, tapos kukunan natin yan ng mth root, which means yung radical sa loob, which is a raised to 1 over n, can further be raised to the reciprocal of the index, which is 1 over m. And then applying laws of exponents, we simply multiply the exponents that we have, and that will lead to 1 times 1 would be 1 all over n times m can be written as mn. Okay? Which means, in radical, it could be written as mn root of a, which is similar to this one. So these 4 are the fundamental laws of radicals, which are very helpful when we are simplifying the simplifying radical expressions. Okay, so how do we simplify radical expressions? There are 4 ways. Okay, number 1 is we remove perfect nth powers. And how do we do that? We break down the radicand into perfect and non-perfect nth powers and apply the property. Yan. So, ibig sabihin, yung radicand, ibe-breakdown natin siya into several factors, as you can see here. Para each of the factor, pwede natin gamitan ng expanded power rule, halimbawa, or yung laws of radicals natin, na pwede natin sila paghiwa-hiwalayan ng radical as, pwede nating paghiwa-hiwalayan yun as radical, separate radical expressions, okay? So, let's start with number 1. Okay, so for number 1, we are solving for the cube root of 32x to the 4th, y raised to 32. So what you're going to do here is, think of a number that if you raise to 3, will result to 32. Okay? Hindi naman kailangan na eksakto. Diba? It's not required that you have the particular factor. If raised to 3, automatic 32 na agad ang sagot. Ano? It could be a combination of several factors. So, for 32, alam natin, this is simply equivalent to 8 times 4. Diba? And that 8, if that's 8 times 4, which is 32, that means, or pwede nating sabihin, this is 2 raised to 5, di ba? Tama ba? Pinakita ko lang yung 8 times 4, kasi dito, kita mo na agad that you have 2 cube here, okay, times 2 squared, which is similar to 2 raised to 5. Pero dito, naka-breakdown na siya into perfect power. Sinabi mong perfect power, ibig sabihin, the base is being raised to the same degree or order of the radical. Okay, so kung ang order ang index mo ay 3, we're looking for a perfect power which is also equivalent to 3. Okay, with a specific base. So dito nilagay ko na lang, I'm going to write here 2 raised to 3 times 2 squared to represent 32. And then for x raised to 4, so i-breakdown lang natin na bubuo lang tayo ng powers, bases with powers of 3. So, kung x raised to 4 yan, ibig sabihin, you have x cubed, diba? Tapos, isa pang x to create x raised to 4. Ang ginawa lang natin again is, binuo natin yung order or yung index. So, the index is cube or index of 3 or order of 3. So, naghiwalay lang ako ng x raised to 3. Para makumpleto, I multiplied by x para bumalik sa given na x raised to 4. Same with y raised to 32. So, ang pwede natin gawin dito ay, we have y raised to 30. Diba? That's, y raised to 30 is a perfect power of 3. Kasi divisible siya by 3. Okay? And then may matitira tayong y squared para y raised to 32 yan. And then what you're going to do is group the perfect powers and then the non-perfect powers. So this will be, cube root yan. So cube root of, kukunin ko lang yung mga naka-cube. Ito, saka ito. So I'll get 2 cube, x cube, and y raised to 30. And then I'll multiply that to cube root of the non-perfect, applying this law of radical. So that would be the cube root of 2 squared, okay, x, and y squared. Okay, so simplifying that, that will lead to 2 cube root, di ba magka-cancel to? Okay, 2 times x times, for this, ibig sabihin, i-divide natin siya by the order or the index. So, 30 divide 3. 30 divide 3. So, that will get y raised to 10. Okay, multiplied by, ito hindi na natin pwedeng i-simplify. So, I'll just write that as cube root of, okay, 4xy squared. Okay, so, bali yun yung process natin. Okay, let's proceed to number 2. For number 2, okay, we can write this as the fifth root of negative 2 raised to 5, para that would be negative 32, and then we'll still have positive 2 for that, para maging negative 64 siya, right? And then, you have a raised to 10, so multiple siya ng 5, so 5, 10, and then you'll get a raised to 4 remaining, so that's your non-perfect power, and then, we will have b raised to 120, 125, okay, b raised to 125, so yung perfect multiple of 5, and then you'll be left with b cubed pa. Okay, so simplifying this, i-group natin together in perfect power, so you'll have negative 2 raised to 5, this one, a raised to 10, and then b raised to 125, multiplied to the fifth power, or the fifth root of 2, a raised to 4, and b cubed. So, simplifying, you will get negative 2, diba? The fifth root of negative 2 raised to 5, a squared, so that would be 10 divide 5, so that's a raised to 2, and then b raised to 125 divide 5, that would be 25, okay? And then you'll have that multiplied to the fifth root of, we cannot simplify this anymore, so that's 2a raised to 4, b cubed, okay? Next. So, for number 3, that would be the seventh root of negative 128, okay, multiplied to x raised to 8 and y raised to 20. Negative 128 is actually negative 2 raised to 7, kasi 2 raised to 5 is 32, times 2, that's 64, times 2, that's 128. So, since this is odd, okay, ibig sabihin, a negative base will produce, a negative base raised to an odd exponent will produce a negative product, which is negative 128. So, I used negative base, negative 2, and then we have x raised to 7, para makumpleto natin yung 7th root. Okay? May labis na isa pang x because this is x raised to 8. And then we have a y raised to 14, which is a multiple of 7. And then may tira tayong y raised to 6. So, grouping together perfect powers, we will have the 7th root of negative 2 raised to 7, x raised to 7, and y raised to 14 to be multiplied to the 7th root of, okay, we have x and y raised to 6. So, finally, the answer will be negative 2, x, so i-divide lang ha, 7 divide 7 would be 1, so you have 1 as an exponent here, and then y squared, so that's 14 divide 7, times the 7th root of, okay, x, y raised to 6. So, that would be our answer. Okay, let's proceed to the next method of simplifying radicals. Okay, so I kind of opened the notes because it's quite difficult to write in the PowerPoint presentation. The space is too small. So let's move forward to the second method of simplifying radicals. So that's reducing the index to the lowest possible order. So bababaan natin yung ating index, okay, as much as possible. So reducing the index is done by applying the property mth root of the nth root of a, which is equivalent to mnth root of a, which means we are going to factor our index or our order. Or expressing the radical into its exponential form, and simplifying the fractional exponent. So, instead, ang gagawin natin is, yung radical, gagawin natin siyang fractional exponent, and then, it would be easier for us to work through the radical expression kasi naka-loss of exponents na tayo. Okay, so, let's start with number 1. Okay, so for number 1, we have the 6th root of 4y raised to 4. Okay, so ang gagawin natin dito is, I'm going to write this into its fractional equivalent. So that would be 4y raised to 4 raised to 1 over 6. Okay, and expressing the constant as a power then, with a base raised to a power. So I can write this as 2 squared for 4, y raised to 4, quantity raised to 1 over 6. And then what I'm going to do is expanded power rule, which will show me that this is 2 raised to 2 over 6, diba? Multiplying the exponents, and I'll have y raised to 4 over 6. Okay. With that, we can simplify the exponent as 2 raised to 1/3, diba? 2 over 6, and then y raised to 2/3. Which shows, babalik ulit tayo, that this can be written as 2 raised to 1 and y squared quantity raised to 1/3. So, nilabas natin. And in that case, we can write this as the cube root of 2y squared. Okay. This is the simpler version of number 1. Okay, let's proceed to number 2. Siguro pwede dito. Okay. Number 2 is the 20th root of 32x raised to 15. So what I can do here is, again, write this in the fractional exponent. So that would be 32x raised to 15, quantity raised to 1 over 20. Okay. I'll represent the constant with a base and a power. So that would be 2 raised to 5. That's the most convenient one. X raised to 15, quantity raised to 1 over 20. And then I'll simply use expanded power rule to distribute the power to every factor. And that will lead to 2 raised to 5 over 20. Okay. And x raised to 15 over 20. Okay. Simplifying the exponent, that will give me 2 raised to 1/4 and x raised to 3/4, which shows this can be written as 2 raised to 1 and x cubed quantity raised to 1/4. Okay, nilabas ko yung denominator natin. And then by radicals, that could be written as the 4th root of 2x cubed. So yun yung simpler version natin in number 2. Okay, let's proceed to number 3. For number 3, you have there the 8th root of 81 x squared y to the 4th z to the 6th. Okay, what I can do here is write this again into its fractional exponent. That's 81 x squared y to the 4th z raised to 6 quantity raised to 1 over 8, and then transform the constant to a power, a base and a power. So this is obviously 3 raised to 4 kasi 3 cubed is 27. So 27 times 3. That gives me 81. And then I'll have x squared y to the 4th z to the 6th quantity raised to 1 over 8. And then I'll distribute this, diba, to all the exponents, and that will lead me to 3 raised to 4 over 8, x raised to 2 over 8, y raised to 4 over 8, and z raised to 6 over 8. Okay. If I were you and you wanted to represent the expression into just one radical sign, you have to choose a denominator or an index that will encompass all the factors into a single radical sign. So, for me, instead of doing 1/2 on this, I'll just do a 2/4 on them so that I'll have them go with 1/4 and 3/4, diba? Para silang denominator na 4. So, ang gagawin ko dito, this will be 3 raised to 2/4, which is 1/2, diba? X raised to 1/4, y raised to 2/4 ulit, and then z raised to 3/4. In that way, this will be written as 3 squared x y squared z cubed quantity raised to 1/4. Okay, and that would be the 4th root of 9xy squared z cubed. But if you want, pwede namang from here, we can write this as 3 raised to 1 half, 3 raised to 1 half, x raised to 1/4, y raised to 1 half, z raised to 3/4. So, pagsasamahin ngayon natin itong dalawang to as 3y, quantity raised to 1 half, and then we'll group together yung naka-fourths. So, that would be xz cube raised to 1/4. And then in radical, that will be written as the square root of 3y times the fourth root of xz cube. This is correct. This is also correct. Okay? Yan. Next. The next method of simplifying radicals is through rationalizing the denominator. Okay, I placed the wrong heading here. Let me just erase this. Okay, this should have been reducing the index. Okay, let's proceed to number 3, which is rationalizing the denominator. Okay. Now, when we say we rationalize, that means this is a process of removing the radical sign in the denominator. So, gagawa natin ang paraan na mawala yung radical sign in the denominator by creating perfect squares. Gagawa tayo o bubuo tayo ng perfect squares sa denominator. So, how do we do that? So, let's take for example number 1. Okay. Number 1 is the fourth root of 1 all over 192 x raised to 11 y raised to 5. So, we can write this. What you're going to do is break down the denominator first. So, that would be fourth root of 1 all over. You're going to break it down to perfect powers again. So, that would be, this is 2 raised to 6 multiplied by 3. You can check that in your calculator. Pag nahirapan kayo dun sa constants, just use your calculator to help you break it down into parts. And then we have x raised to 11 and then y raised to 5. So to rationalize this, what you're going to do is to complete the exponents in a sense that they will be perfect powers of the index. So if the index is to the fourth power, kailangan yung exponents ng denominator mo are they are a multiple of the index or the order. So ang gagawin nyo dyan is multiply the denominator by a factor that will complete these. Okay? As perfect powers. So, si 2 raised to 6, kailangan niya pa ng 2 squared para maging 2 raised to 8 siya. If it is 2 raised to 8, then it becomes a multiple of 4. Pwede na ngayon natin siyang i-divide. Diba? Mawawala yung radical sign if we take the fourth root. For 3, that would be 3 cube, diba? Para maging 3 raised to 1, okay, times 3 cube, that's 3 raised to 4. Okay, for x raised to 11, have to multiply this by just 1x. Okay, just 1x to make this x raised to 12. And then we have a y raised to 8. Y raised to 3 to make this y raised to 8, which is again a multiple of 4. What you multiply in the denominator, you also multiply in the numerator. And that gives you 2 squared, 3 cubed, x, y cubed. For the purpose of parang walang nagbago sa given natin. Kasi, in a sense, di ba, pwede mong i-cancel to eh. Because it's similar. So, ibig sabihin, even though this is multiplied to this, and this one to this, it will appear as though this is still, andun pa rin tayo dun sa original given. Wala tayong binago dun sa given natin. Okay, in that case, ano mangyayari? Ang mangyayari ay, this will be equivalent to the fourth root of, okay, I will have 2 squared, 3 cube, x, y cube all over. I will have 2 raised to 8 now. 2 raised to 8. 3 raised to 4. I'll have x raised to 12. And y raised to 8. Okay, doing so, pwede ko nang masimplify yung denominator by having fourth root of the numerator, which is 2 squared, 3 cube, xy cube, all over, this will now be 2 squared, that will now be 2 squared, times 3, times x cubed, times y squared. So what you're going to do is to simply divide each of the exponents by the index. So 8 divided 4 is 2, 4 divided 4 is 3 raised to 1, 12 divided 4 is 3, and 8 divided 4 is 2. And that gives us this as an answer. So pwede natin ganuin na lang tong ano, 4th root of, that's 108 xy cube all over, you have 4 times 3. So that's 12 x cube y squared. Okay, so ito ngayon yung sagot natin for number 1. Okay, let's proceed to number 2. Number 2, we have the cube root of 1 all over 32xy squared. So I'm going to multiply this, or I'll transform this first as the cube root of 1 all over 2 raised to 5 xy squared, and then multiply it to factors that will make the denominator perfect perfect powers of the order or the index. So ang multiple ni 3 ay 6. So ibig sabihin, this should be multiplied by another 2 to make it 2 raised to 6. And then si x, I have to multiply that with x squared para maging x cubed siya. And then si y squared, I have to multiply that by y for it to become y cubed. And then I'll do the same in the numerator. This is under the same radical sign. So that will result to, this will result to the cube root of 2x squared y all over, I will have 2 raised to 6 x cube and y cube, and then proceed with loss of exponents. So I'll get the cube root of 2x squared y for the numerator, and then for the denominator, that would be free of radical signs. I'll have 2 squared, diba? 6 divided 3 would be 2, and then x raised to 1 kasi 3 divided 3, and y raised to 1. So 3 divide 3 ulit. So ito yung sagot natin. Ang sagot natin bali ay magiging cube root ng 2x squared y, divide natin yan ng 4xy. Kasi 2 squared would be 4. Okay? Let's proceed to number 3. Okay, so for number 3, we have that as the 6th root of 5 all over 432 x to the 4th y squared. Okay, so breaking this down to perfect powers, or breaking it down to its powers, so that would be 432 would be 2 raised to 4 times 3 cubed. I only did this as trial and error with my calculator, so I'm sure you can do that on your own. I have here x raised to 4 and y squared. So to think of the factors, I have to multiply in the denominator to complete an order of 6. That would be 2 squared para maging 2 raised to 6. That would be 3 cubed para maging 3 raised to 6. And then I'll have x squared para sa x raised to 6. And then y to the 4th for y raised to 6. I'll multiply this also to the numerator. Okay. And that will lead me to the 6th root of, let me write that as 5 times 2 squared times 3 cubed x squared y to the 4th all over. I will have here 2 raised to 6, 3 raised to 6, x raised to 6, and y raised to 6. So taking the 6th root of the denominator, I will have the 6th root of the numerator. So that would be, let me get my calculator for that so that you see it. I have 5 times 2 squared, okay, times 3 cubed. Okay, and that gives me 540 x squared y to the 4th all over. I will have this as 2 times 3 times x times y. And that will result to the 6th root of 540 x squared y to the 4th all over 6xy. Therefore, how do we simplify or rationalize a denominator that contains 2 terms? Okay, that is the square root of 3x plus the square root of y all over the square root of 5x plus the square root of 2y. To do this, you multiply both the numerator and denominator by the additive inverse or multiplicative inverse of the denominator. So that's simply by copying the denominator. Kung square root yan, i-multiply mo siya, ganun pa rin. I-multiply mo siya ng same term that will make it a perfect power. So, ang mangyayari dyan, I have to multiply this by the square root of 5x. Okay, para parehas silang, anong tawag doon? Parang maging 5x squared, square root siya. Okay. And then, square root of 2y din. Pero this time, instead of plus, I'll do this as minus. Okay. And then, I'll do the same thing in the numerator. So, I'll have this as the square root of 5x minus the square root of 2y naman. And then, proceed with FOIL method to multiply. Okay. So, by multiplication, let's proceed with the numerator first. So, ito yon, di ba? That would be, since same index sila, pwede ko yung isulat as the square root of 3x times 5x, okay, minus outer tayo, the square root of 3x times 2y, okay, plus inner tayo, that would be the square root of y times 5x, and then lastly you have minus the square root of y times 2y, okay. Doing the same thing in the denominator, you can notice that this is sum and difference of the same two terms. Ibig sabihin, that will result to difference of squares. So, in short, ang gagawin mo lang dyan is simply take the first term, that's square root of 5x, and then take its square minus the second term, which is square root of 2y, and then square it. Okay. Doing, performing simplification in the numerator, this will be the square root of 15x squared, okay, minus the square root of 6xy, okay, plus the square root of 5xy, okay, and then minus the square root of 2y squared. All over, in the denominator, that will now become 5x minus 2y. So, we can further simplify the numerator kasi meron tayong mga similar radicals dyan, similar terms, or we can simplify other radical expressions dahil may mga squares tayo dito. So, ibig sabihin that will result to the square root of 15 tapos x na lang. Dito pwede tayong mag-factor, diba? Hindi nyo pwedeng kasi kapag radicals, hindi natin to basta pwede i-operate dahil nakita mo lang na parehas yung literal coefficient. This is not anymore considered a polynomial, so we cannot simply just add the constants. So, ang pwede lang natin gawin dito is, kasi ito, pwede natin siyang isulat as negative square root of 6 times square root of xy plus square root of 5 times square root of xy, diba? Minus square root of 2 tas y na lang. Okay, in that sense, what am I pointing out? I'm pointing out that you have a common radical expression here that you can factor out. So, if you do that, that would be the square root of 15x, okay? I'll try to factor out, this plus square root of xy times, I'll be left with, unahin ko to kasi positive siya, square root of 5, ito, minus square root of 6, okay? Minus the square root of 2y all over 5x minus 2y. And this will be our answer. Ito kasi hindi mo na pwedeng i-simplify dyan eh. Unless you press it in your calculator and then you replace it with a decimal equivalent. Okay. But, ayan. This is how you simplify a radical expression or a fraction with a radical expression in the denominator. And that is by rationalizing the denominator means removing the radical sign in the denominator. Okay? Let's proceed to simplifying the radicals by factoring out the greatest common factor. Okay? Is that blue? Okay, it's supposed to be number 4. Okay? That's by factoring. I think I wrote with black, diba? Okay, that's supposed to be number 4, which is factoring. So, to simplify by factoring, ganun pa rin. We simply factor the common term, okay, appearing in every terms that you have. And, let's go straight to the example. So, with number 1, palitin ko lang to, and then, yan, okay. with number 1, I have there 4 multiplied by 2x plus 1 raised to 3 halves times 3x minus 1 raised to 1/3, okay, plus 3 times 2x plus 1 raised to 1/2, okay, and 3x minus 1 raised to 4/3, okay. The tip here is, if you can notice this, 2x plus 1 appears on both terms, and then they have different exponents. So, kung fraction yan, at parehas positive, ganun pa rin, we choose the least positive, which is 1/2, to be factored out. So, for 3x minus 1, we're going to factor out 1/3 naman, kasi mas maliit siya kay 4/3. So, doing that, ibig sabihin, I'm going to factor out 2x plus 1, pero I'm going to choose the lower exponent, which is 1/2, and then 3x minus 1, choosing the lower exponent, which is 1/3. Okay, this will be multiplied to, so what will happen is, the first term, ito yon, will be divided by this. And if you do that, you'll be left with 4 times, so you will have here 3 halves minus 1/2, diba? And that would be 2 over 2, which is 1. So, which means this will be multiplied to 2x plus 1 raised to 1. And then, you will have 3x minus 1 raised to 1/3 as cancel. Okay? And then, you'll have plus sign. Okay, plus. And then, you'll have 3, diba? Kasi ito, divided by this. So, you'll be left with 3 multiplied 2. In this case, si 2x plus 1 raised to 1/2 naman yung makakancel. And then, ito, divided by this, that would be 4/3 minus 1/3, that would be 3 over 3. So, that means you will have 3x minus 1 raised to 1. Okay? In that case, this will be 2x plus 1 raised to 1/2 times 3x minus 1 raised to 1/3. Okay, multiplied by, we do distribution, so that would be 8x plus 4 plus 9x minus 3. Okay, so that will be 2x plus 1 raised to 1/2 and 3x minus 1 raised to 1/3. Tapos, you'll have 17x plus 1. Diba? If you want, you can further simplify the radicals by producing a root. Okay, similar in the denominator. So, para mangyari dito, pwede nating pagparehasin na lang yung index ng dalawang radical mo para maging isang radical expression lang siya. Pwede naman yun. So, ang gagawin mo lang doon, kunin mo yung least common denominator ng 2 at 3, and that would be 6. So, by transforming that, magiging ano to? 2x plus 1 raised to, for a denominator of 6, diba? That would be 6 divided 2 times 1, that would be 3. And then you'll have 3x minus 1. For a denominator of 6, divide 3, that would be 2 times 1, so that would be 2. In that case, pwede mo itong gawing 6th root ng 2x plus 1 cube times 3x minus 1 squared. Okay, that is if you want your answers to be in just a single radical expression or single order. Pero if not, this is already accepted as an answer. This is accepted as an answer already. Okay, ang pangit ng highlighter ko. Okay, yan. Pero alternative, this could be used for this portion, and then kakopy mo na lang to dito. Okay, let's proceed to number 2. So, for number 2, you have there 2x plus 1 raised to 1/2 times 3x minus 2 raised to negative 2/3 plus 2x plus 1 raised to negative 1/2 and 3x minus 2 raised to 1/3. Of course, with options of, kasi ito, 2x plus 1, positive 1/2 yan, tsaka 2x plus 1 raised to negative 1/2, we choose the negative exponent to be factored out. In this sense, ito din, tsaka ito, we choose negative 2/3 to be factored out as well. So, anong mangyayari dito is, I'm going to factor out 2x plus 1, pero raised to negative 1/2, and I'll factor out 3x minus 2 raised to negative 2/3. That is to make the factors, the remaining factors or the remaining terms to be positive in their exponents. Okay, so yan, we will have this divided by this. Okay, so mangyayari dito is you have 2x plus 1 raised to 1 half minus negative 1 half. So that would be 1 half plus 1 half. That's positive 1 na lang dito. Okay? And then, 3x minus 2 raised to negative 2/3. And this will be cancelled. Moving over to the next term, which is this one. So that I'll write here plus. Okay? Makakancel naman ito divided by this. Cancel si 2x plus 1 raised to negative 1 half. So I'll be working with 3x minus 2 na lang. So I'll have 3x minus 2. And then you have there 1/3 minus negative 2/3. So that would be 1/3 plus 2/3. It's positive 1 also. So yun, that ends this. So pwede natin itong isulat as 2x plus 1 raised to negative 1 half. Okay. 3x minus 2 raised to negative 2/3. And then we simplify this as what? 5x. Okay. 5x minus 1. Okay. And then to remove the negative exponents, ayun, we reciprocal that, or we reciprocal the base. Dali natin siya sa ilalim to make it positive in exponent. So magkakaroon ka ngayon ng numerator na 5x minus 1 all over. Ibababa natin to dito. So that would be 2x plus 1, pero positive 1 half na siya. Okay, times 3x minus 2, which is positive 2/3 na yung exponent niya. So again, if you want, you can represent naman the denominator in a single radical expression like with what we did in the previous example. Okay? So that's how you simplify your radicals. Okay, next. This time, we are going to discuss how do we add and subtract again radical expressions. So let's write here addition and subtraction of radicals. Okay. So, similar radicals are radicals of the same order. Okay, that's number 1. And the same radicand. Okay, kailangan parehas yung radicand nila. Ibig sabihin, same ang constants, same din ang literal coefficients ng radicand sa loob. Radicand. Okay. Similar radicals can be combined into a single radical by the use of the distributive law, like what we did kanina, di ba? Nag-factor tayo. Or, ibig sabihin, in a sense, yung common term is distributed to all the other terms. So, pwede natin siyang ilabas. Okay. Radicals of different indices, pag magkaiba yung index, tsaka magkaiba yung radicands, then they are dissimilar radicals. And in that case, we cannot simplify them. Okay. Or we cannot add them or subtract them. So, let's try to illustrate that with example number 1. Okay, number 1, we have 2x times the 4th root of 4x squared y squared. Okay, minus the square root of 8x cubed y plus xy, the 4th root of x squared, minus the square root of x cubed y squared. Okay, so for number 1, what we do is let's try to simplify first each of the radical expressions so that we can definitely see which one among these have which one of them are considered similar radicals. Okay, so first and foremost, you have here 2x. Okay, and then I can simplify this as the 4th root of 2 squared x squared y squared minus, I will have here the square root of 2 cubed x cubed y, okay, plus xy times the 4th root of x squared, okay, again, and the minus the square root of x cubed y squared. Okay, so by reducing the order of the index, I'll try to reduce the order of the index. That means this will be 2x square root na lang, kasi that would be 2 over 4, 2 over 4, 2 over 4, diba? So I can write this as the square root of 2, I'll write that as the square root of 2xy, okay, minus, I will have this as, I can factor out, or I can take the square root of 2 squared, that will give me 2, pero may matitira akong isang 2 na lang sa loob. And then x cubed, we'll have x squared times x. So, ibig sabihin, pwede rin ako maglabas ng, x, 2x. So, I'll be left with square root of 2 times x times y. Okay? Which definitely shows that these two are similar. And you have subtraction in between them. So, magka-cancel lang yung dalawang yan. Okay, moving on to the next one. We have here plus xy, pwede ko itong gawing square root na lang. So, I'll reduce the order of the index. So, that would be x squared. So, that would be 2 over 4. So, magiging x na lang. Para 1 over 2, 1 half. Okay? And then, minus, pwede kong i-simplify ito by taking perfect powers. So, may lalabas dito na xy. And then, I'll be left with square root of x na lang. Diba? Kasi x cube yun eh. Meron kang x squared tsaka x. Yung x squared mo, lalabas mo sa radical sign, x na lang siya. So, which shows similar din ito. So, in short, ang sagot natin dito ay 0. Kasi makakancel lang to. Plus ito. So, 0 yung sagot. Okay? Let's proceed to number 2. Okay. For number 2, you have the square root of 2r cubed t cubed. Okay. Plus the square root of r cubed t squared. Plus the fourth root of 4r to the 6 t raised to 6. Okay, minus r squared, the square root of t squared over r. Okay. Okay. So, we are going to simplify each of the terms first before we proceed with the operation. So, by removing perfect powers, this will be r times t, diba? Kasi cube to eh. Square root lang to. So, may lalabis na isang r at isang t sa loob. So, that would be rt square root of 2rt din. Okay. Plus, same with this. Pwede akong maglabas ng rt dito. And then, I'll be left with the square root of r na lang. Okay. Plus, I can write this as the fourth root of 2 squared, r to the 6th, tsaka t to the 6th. Okay. Minus, I will write this as r squared times t times the square root of 1 all over r. Okay? And in that sense, pwede ko nang isimplify yung iba dito. I can continue simplifying the others. So, I will have here rt times the square root of 2rt. Okay? Plus rt times the square root of r. Plus, I can reduce the index of this. Okay, at the same time, pwede din ako maglabas ng ilang perfect powers. So, unahin ko muna yung perfect powers. Ibig sabihin, meron akong r at t na mabubuo for fourth power. That would be fourth root of still 2 squared. And then, I'll be left with r squared, t squared. Diba? 6 minus 4. Okay. Minus, I'll have r squared t. And then, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to rationalize this. So, by multiplying an r in the denominator and an r in the numerator. So, in that sense, this will be the square root of r all over r squared. Okay? Let's write that. So, we have rt, square root of 2rt, plus rt, square root of r, okay? Plus rt, pwede kong i-reduce yung index nito. So, gagawin ko tong square root na lang. Kasi, 2 over 4, 2 over 4, 2 over 4 sila lahat. So, magiging 1 half na lang. That would be 2rt then. Okay? Raised to 1 half or simply square root. And then, minus, what? Minus r squared t. I'll get square root of r all over. Simplifying the denominator, that will be r. Which means, pwede ako mag-cancel ng r power sa taas. At makakancel din yung denominator ko. So, in short, I'll write this as rt, square root of 2rt, okay, plus rt, square root of r, plus rt, square root of 2rt, okay, minus, I'll have rt, square root of r na lang, diba? And as you can notice, I have rt square root of r with positive negative sign. So, makakancel lang yun. And then, I can simplify this as, since they are similar and we're adding them, ibig sabihin, meron tayong dalawa, diba? Isa, dalawa. Dalawang rt square root of 2rt. This will be our answer for number 2. Okay? Next. So, let's proceed with multiplication and division naman. So, for multiplication and division, let's start with multiplication first. Okay, so, to multiply radicals of the same order, we use the laws of radicals, the nth root of AB, or if you have this one, the nth root of A times the nth root of B, that's simply equivalent to the nth root of A times B. So, after that, we simplify. So, let's try the first example. Let's say number 1, we are taking the product of the cube root of 4x cubed y squared times the cube root of 4x to the 5th y squared. Okay? Simplifying this, you'll have that under the same roof, or under the same radical or order, which is cube root of, that would be 4 squared, that would be x raised to 8, and that will give you y raised to 4. And that means I can simplify this further by producing perfect powers again. So 4 squared is 16, and I can write that as 2 raised to 4, 16. And then I will have x raised to 6, may labis akong x squared to create x raised to 8. And then I'll have y cubed tsaka y. In the same manner, I can erase this. I'll just erase this. I'll erase this and replace that by 2 cubed times 2 for it to be 2 raised to 4. So, ang mangyayari dito is, group ulit natin, or we can simply take out all the perfect powers, diba? And that will result to 2 x squared, because that's 6 divide 3, and y times the cube root of 2x squared y. This will be our answer. Okay, let's proceed to number 2. So that would be 4th root of 27 x squared y cubed times the 4th root of 15 x cubed y. What I can do here is, let me just show you that I can write this as 3 cubed, that will produce 27, and then x squared y cubed. Let me show you that this is the 4th root of 3, okay, times 5, x cubed y. Why did I do that? Because you'll have a 3 raised to 4 here, diba? And that will lead to the 4th root of, okay, combining this two, that would be 3 raised to 4, and then I'll have another constant, which is 5. For x, I will have x squared and x cubed, which is x to the 5th. And then for y, I will have y raised to 4. So, simplifying this, I can take out perfect powers. So, that would be 3. That would be x, diba? May isang x, tas may matitirang isa pang x sa loob, kasi this is x to the 4 times x, right? Okay. And then I'll have y then taken out of the radical. So, I'll be left with the 4th root of 5x. So, definitely our answer will be 3xy, 4th root of 5x. Okay? Next, let's proceed to division. Okay? How do we divide naman? So, of course, for division, kakaroon niya kakaroon niya ng radical in the denominator, which means we will definitely have to use rationalizations, diba? Pero, to divide two radicals of the same order, we use the nth root of A divided by the nth root of B, which is equivalent to the nth root of A over B. Okay, and then after that, we are going to rationalize our denominator. Or, kagaya ng ginawa natin kanina, di ba? We simply rationalize to divide. Okay, let's do that. So, let's start with 1A. Parang rationalization lang to eh. The cube root of 1 all over 12 xy squared z to the 4th, which means I have to multiply this by, or wait, let me just simplify that first, or create powers, transform it into powers. So that would be cube root of 1 all over, so that's 2 squared times 3, diba? Para maging 12 yan. Xy squared z to the 4th. So, I'm going to multiply this by another 2 to make that 2 cubed. 3 squared to make that 3 cubed. X squared to make that x cubed. Y to make that y cubed. And z squared to make that z raised to 6. So, that would be multiplied to the numerator as well. And that will result to the cube root of copying. So, that would be what? 9 times 2. That's 18. x squared y z squared all over. That will produce 2 cube, 3 cube, x cube, y cube, and z raised to 6. So, okay, by removing my perfect powers, I'll be left with the cube root of 18, x squared y z squared all over. I will have 2 times 3, that would be 6, di ba? 2 times 3 will be 6, and then I'll get x, y, z squared. And this will be my answer. Okay. Remember, ito ay index, ha? This is an index. Okay? So, let's proceed to the next one. So, let's proceed to 1b. In short, it's simply rationalizing. Diba? So, that's 4th root of 1 all over 3x squared y cubed. Since it's already simplified, I can go straight to multiplying factors that will create perfect powers. So that would be 3 raised to 3, okay, x squared and y. So I'll multiply that in the numerator as well. Okay, nagagets nyo naman, diba, kung paano nakukompleto. O yun, binubuo lang natin yung 4 dun sa exponents natin. So, simplifying that will lead me to the 4th root of the numerator, which is 3 cubed, which is 27, x squared y. Okay, all over. I will have there 3 x and y. This will be my final answer. Let's proceed to number 2. We have 2 terms in the denominator for that. So, let's start with 2a. That is 1 divided by the square root of, I have here x squared minus 1, which is the difference of squares, times x minus 1. So, let me factor that first before I proceed with the radical expression itself. So, that would be 1 all over the square root of, this can be factored into sum and difference. So, that's x plus 1, x minus 1, and then I will still have another x minus 1 here, which shows that this is actually 1 all over the square root of x plus 1 times x minus 1 squared. And since this is a perfect square, I can simplify this already as 1 all over x minus 1 sa labas, diba? And I'll be left with the square root of x plus 1, which means if I'm going to rationalize this, I'll have to multiply it by the square root of x plus 1. So I'll do that in the numerator, square root of x plus 1. Okay? And that will result to the square root of x plus 1 in the numerator all over. I will have x minus 1 multiplied to this, multiplied to this. So, mariremove lang yung radical sign natin, and then I'll have it as x plus 1, which shows that this is simply the square root of x plus 1 all over x squared minus 1. If you expand this, diba, it will become difference of squares. So, this will be our answer. Okay, let's try 2b. So, for 2b, this is the square root of a minus b all over a plus b. Okay, so to solve this, I have to multiply its denominator by the square root of the same term, a plus b. Okay, kasi kanina yung difference is you have 2 terms. Kasi diba, meron tayong example kanina na nag-multiply tayo ng multiplicative inverse. And we only do that because there are 2 separate radical expressions in the denominator. Ito kasi, you have a binomial in the denominator, but they are not radical expressions. Kumbaga, they are not separately radical expressions. Isang expression lang to under a radical sign. So, I'll just multiply this by the square root of itself, the same term, square root of a plus b. And then this will result to, I will have the square root of a minus b, applying laws of radicals, a plus b. I can put them under the same index all over. That will remove the radical sign in the denominator, and so I'll have a plus b here. Simplifying the numerator, that would be the square root of a squared minus b squared all over a plus b. But note, you cannot cancel this, ha? Kasi baka mamaya cancelin nyo yan. Kasi nga, in-square root mo yung difference of squares. No. Okay, hindi tayo pwedeng mag-distribute ng exponent. Diba? Pag tinignan mo to sa laws of exponents, this is simply raised to 1/2. And you cannot distribute this here because they are separated by a subtraction or an addition sign. Okay, so that leaves us to this answer for number 2, letter B. Okay. Next. So, that ends the content of this presentation, and yeah, for this topic, we do not have a chapter exercise to do because we have lots of activities in our book that will be set for you to do. Okay, so again, if you have questions, feel free to message me.